everyone, and welcome to another edition of What's the Message? I am your host, Claudia Allen, and of course, I am here with my co-host, my commander-in-chief, my editor-in-chief, the lady that makes it all happen, the one and only Carmela Monk Crawford. And I am so excited for today's conversation because I have brought some really good friends of mine to talk about a topic that is particularly close to heart. And so I would like to introduce you to Pastor John and April Nixon. John and April have been married for almost 20 years and have been coaching couples for about the same amount of time. Together, they have two children, John the third, 15, and Julia, 12. They host a relationship podcast called Just John and April that airs on YouTube every Friday. And John serves as the lead pastor at Tacoma Park Church in Maryland, and April is a middle school teacher at Spencerville Adventist Academy. Beyond all that, they're just mad fun. And I'm telling you, you guys are going to enjoy their personality, their wisdom, and everything that they kind of have to share with us right now as we talk more about relationships. All right. Now, I am particularly excited about today's episode because there was one couple who got married in the midst of a Philadelphia George Floyd protest. I am talking about Kerry and Michael Gordan. Now, Kerry is a doctor, originally from Jamaica, and Michael is a wireless deployment manager, originally from Pennsylvania. Now, they got married on June 6th, like I said, during a Black Lives Matter protest in Philadelphia. Quote, while I was getting ready in the hotel, this is Kerry Ann speaking, and I'm reading over vows that I wrote 5 months ago. At that moment, I was just so overwhelmed with emotion. We already had a lot built up inside because of the protests over the past week. So seeing that we were embarking on this together and everything we've been through, and that now we're on the forefront of America fighting for justice and trying to push for positivity and change, I'm not only proud as a Black woman and Black professional, I'm so proud of him, her husband, to represent who we are as a people. The bride tells Vogue. Read more about the couple's story in the Vogue magazine. But in spite of this, kind of amazing display, right? I'm sure you saw some of the photos go through just now. I've been kind of seeing a bit of mixed reviews on social media. And so some are wondering, is this a distraction and a deterrent from the George Floyd case? Or is this a really powerful image of Black love kind of on display in the midst of what is a really tumultuous situation? Carmela, what are your thoughts? I'm tossing it to you. Let's bring in John and April and let's see what you guys think about what's going on.
Oh, awesome. Good morning to you, Claudia, and good morning, John and April Nixon. Man, this is a good day to have you on here. This beautiful couple to talk about this idea. Claudia, you know me. If there was a protest that was going on when I got married, I certainly would have loved to have been able to walk over and be a part of that. I love this idea. And the thing for me is that this wasn't an idea. And that's where I come down on this. This was not a destination wedding where they decided that they were going to take on or insert themselves into a protest. This is what it means to be a Black person in America. You get married, you have to love, you have to live, you die, everything with this cloud around you every day. And so for me, this was highly symbolic of what it means to be in love and a relationship in America if you're Black.
Yeah, absolutely. John and April, what do you guys think?
So first of all, we loved it. I think you liked it, right, babe? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was dope. So
I did too.
I thought the idea itself was cool as I read the headlines and stuff like that. But I think once I read more about the story, it became even more than even symbolic, almost like a confirmation. So it's weird. April and I, when we got married, we really wanted to make sure we were doing the right thing. So we kind of prayed through it. And there were several things that we were looking for as like signs from the Lord that we should really be doing this. And so when we finally took the plunge, it was like we were just completely confident that we were doing what God wanted us to do. So I'm thinking through with this couple, right? So she said, first of all, they were planning on getting married much later. And they decided to change the date and make it earlier because of this pandemic, which a lot of people are facing right now. We got tons of couples who are coming to us. We're like coaching them virtually now because they're all pushing their dates up because they're like, we don't know. We know that we can't have our wedding now. We're not sure when we're even going to be able to gather again. So they're like trying to make decisions and they're calling us, asking questions. What do you think we should do? I almost feel like that's what this couple was doing. They were trying to figure out whether or not it's the right idea to change the date and move it up. And as they were thinking through it, they probably were having anxiety about, is it the right time? And then all of a sudden they hear the date they chose to go to this hotel, I think was doing some free stuff, which is the date they chose.
Right.
Then this protest is happening. So it wasn't like they were planning to have the wedding during the protest. They found out later that the protest was happening on the same date that they had already chosen. And so they're probably thinking now, man, what are we going to do? Are people going to be able to get in here? Are the roads going to be blocked off? So things happened and unfolded in such a way that they could still have the wedding, their people could still get there, and they could play this sort of symbolic role in having their wedding in the middle of this protest. To me, it almost feels like the Lord was saying, here's my rubber stamp on your wedding. The date change was a good thing. To me, it seemed great.
Yeah. I saw it as like, two Black people that represent, that we can be professional, successful Black people,
right,
who are coming together, this Black love being shown during this protest. And it kind of shows that, George Floyd and these others who have been shot and killed, they had families.
Right.
We have families. We have love in our lives. It's not just this being who you can just shoot and kill. It's not just this animal. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are human beings who have families, who love us. We love them. It goes further than just husband and wife, children, parents, all that. And it's
so this couple almost symbolizes this greater idea that Black people are not just, people to get shot. I mean, we have lives. We're real people.
We're real people. We're just like you and everybody else who has love in their lives, So I love that they were successful Black people who, it's like they had to go, they had to do it. It was like they didn't have a choice. Right. That's how I felt. Like, I feel like if that was us, it'd be like, we have to do this.
We gotta be out there.
We have to be out there.
Yeah.
There's no way once we find out that's happening, we're changing our date again. You know what I'm saying? We're like, now we're going through and we got to find a way to do this and make this where we're part of it.
And I like that it organically happened.
Me too. It doesn't feel contrived. It wasn't forced. You know what I'm saying? And I honestly, as soon as we saw it, we were kind of both like, yo, Black love matters. You know what I'm saying?
we just got hyped.
Yeah. It was just great.
Absolutely.
I love the pictures. You know what I'm saying? It was nice. It was heartwarming. So the people that say, it's a distraction, it takes away and stuff like that. I guess a person that maybe read the headline might that, but I don't think a person who reads the actual story is thinking that.
Right.
Because you hear the details of the story and you're like, these people didn't try to create a photo op. They didn't try to insert themselves into this. It was like organically, it just kind of happened. And it feels like the way in which it happened, it wasn't an accident, that maybe God was in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would look at it as a sign, in my opinion.
So in essence, they didn't throw tear gas to kind of disperse the protesters so they could take a picture. They didn't.
Correct.
They didn't do that.
Sort of.
Okay.
That's the perfect example of sort of juxtaposition on how people use these situations for their personal gain. I don't think that's what they were doing. At least it doesn't seem like it. And I feel like if a person was doing that, I don't know about the example you just gave, but I'm just saying, if a person was doing that, I would have a problem with that. You know what I'm saying? That'd be a little different.
Right. Yeah. Well, the president, he, threw some tear gas, dispersed the protesters.
I think I heard about that at some point.
With his Bible, something like that, But no, I think that's so good. Go ahead, Carmela.
I said, I love the fact that when you read about the bride, she, just like many of us, you go through this meticulous planning of a wedding, they started a year out. You're right. She had to move it up several times. But what they said about her was that she was concerned with making sure that her wedding had what she called timeless details to it. And so you see her there in this very classic, romantic, poetic dress Her hair has this classic everything. And to me, that is in itself symbolic of what this is, trying to make beauty, trying to go with these themes in the midst of this chaos.
Yes.
Right.
Is to me so symbolic of what our experience is.
I was just about to say, I think it's symbolic of the entire Black experience. That's what we try to do every single day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Music, make jazz, make poetry, make stories, make everything in the middle of what we got going on. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
layering on top of it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I agree.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you guys were saying, because I felt like it was just another example of the fact that we actually don't get a break. And so it's like only white people get the opportunity to wake up and say, oh, well, like this does not involve me. It is separate from me. I'm going to get married today. Black people are like, all right, well, we're going to get married. Then we're going to go to the protest, and then we're going to go down to the church because we got to have the service project. You know what I mean? It's like there's so much. And I think we even see it in our timelines, right? Because it's like on Facebook, it's like you watch someone get killed, and then the very next picture is, kids in Africa, coming up with a brand new dance. Then after that, it's a comedian doing a stand-up. Then after that, somebody got married. It's literally what is on our social media timeline all of the time. We have to laugh, cry, be angry, be in love, all at the same time. I feel like not just her, but their wedding and in the midst of this just really embodied that, like, hey, this is who we are. This is the life we live. Yeah. We can't separate it.
You talked about taking a break. It's funny because sometimes you deliberately try to take breaks. But at some point in your life, you realize that you can't take a break. And I don't mean that you really tried to take a break. You just tried to, as you're trying to deal with this as a kid, or as a teenager, you sometimes settle into this sort of I'm normal kind of thing. And then something happens to remind you that you're Black.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you grow up with this idea. Yeah, there are no breaks. I'm always Black no matter what. And what I'm really saying is, the only time that you really have a break, at least in my experience, has been when I'm around other Black people. But it's when I get to be with the majority culture that something always happens to remind me, yeah, you're just a Black guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with you, because I was sharing my Black experience. I was asked to share my Black experience as a woman in America with my coworkers and a large group of people. And as I was talking about the experiences that I had from childhood, teenage, adult years, I thought about that, and I was like, man, I had to think about it and say, this is not normal. I mean, it's normal for me,
but it shouldn't be normal.
Right. It shouldn't be normal. Like it kind of clicked. I mean, I got emotional. Like I started crying, and I told John, I was like, we don't even really talk about this in a therapeutic way.
No.
We talk about our stories, but this is something that we live. This is what we live. Right. And so when I hear people's responses like, oh my goodness, that's what you've been through. I'm like, you're right. Wait a minute. And through it all, I'm going to school. I'm playing sports. I'm getting married.
Wow.
But it's like, we don't really think about this, because as Black people, we do not talk about it in a therapeutic way.
What we do is we share with each other.
We share with each other.
Like, do you know what happened to me today?
Exactly.
Or you ain't gonna believe this. Or
it's just I think that's just a part of our culture too.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
But when I started talking about it in that context, the context I was in, I got emotional, and I was like, why am I crying about this? This is what we always lived. Why is this?
I feel you so much on that. I had a similar experience a couple years ago. I had shared at Andrews at this conference that I went back for. And I was like, oh yeah, like when I was like 5, I was in kindergarten, a kindergarten that's out here in Maryland, will remain nameless. And so I went to class. This white boy kissed me on the lips. They called me into the principal's office, and they were going to expel me because they were like, Claudia, we don't kiss here. We don't do that. That's not appropriate. So I'm crying. I'm a hot mess because I'm like, I didn't do it. He did it to me. I didn't do it. He did it to me. And so my mom comes, and anybody that knows my mom, she handled it. And so she basically was just like, oh no. And I have had that story for over 20 years, right? I have told it to other Black people. We've laughed about it. Just now, it did not matter. The moment I told that to an all-white audience, wow, I'm getting choked up.
Wow.
And I'm like, why am I crying about this?
Yeah.
But there is something to what you're saying, April. It's like when you actually kind of share your actual experiences with racism and racial profiling and et cetera, with white people. And then they actively respond like,
yes,
that's not okay. That's unacceptable. Then it like hits you like, oh yeah, this is not okay.
First of all, you feel seen.
Yeah.
You feel like somebody other than, because when you share with another Black person and they say, yeah, I get that, then I don't know, they're Black, they're supposed to get it. When a white person hears it and responds not with, because what you're used to is either being dismissed or the subject being changed or somebody trying to downplay and say, are you sure that was racism? But when it hits them in a visceral way and immediately they respond with, you're right. That's not right. That's not okay. I cannot believe you had to deal with that. Yo, it's like, man,
whoa, you're right.
Yeah.
And then responds with, I have never been through that before. I have never felt discrimination. I mean, I had people respond to me, I've never felt discrimination. I'm like, what? I don't even know. I could not even.
You don't know what it feels like.
You know
to
what I'm
not
saying? Like
feel
I couldn't even. I'm like, you've never. How can you have never felt? At least one time you had. No, never felt that before. Never had that kind of experience. And that took that. I'm like, wow, why do I have to have that story? You know what I'm saying? Like I should not feel that either.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it makes you emotional.
So I do love the fact that they were able to kind of, in the midst of sort of a terrible situation, have the most blissful moment of their lives, being married. In the middle of that.
Yeah.
I like you said,
it displays
Carmela,
that we just keep going.
Yes,
we're gonna continue living.
That's the essence of the Black experience.
It
we
is.
are not going to just take what it is that we're getting. Instead, we're going to take this and make it into something positive. And
I think
it's a beautiful thing,
What is interesting, it is because we have this experience over and over again, and because it's so much part of our life, in this moment is going to be so important for us to be able to step back and be able to catalog these things and articulate these things, because we are used to this burn, you know what I mean? We're used to the fire being at the level that it is. Now is when we have to relate to the people that we have relationships with and say, here's what my life is, tick by tick by tick by tick. This may be normal for me, but I bet you this is not the way it is. And just like you said, this is a moment whereby people may not be so willing to dismiss it. You know what I mean?
Right,
because a lot of times people are defensive and they say, well, you don't know what I have to go through. I don't have any privilege. I don't have this. I don't have that. But when you put it and you shake it, or you hold it up in the light of racism and you recognize this, but I think it's going to be hard for us to break it down on a day-to-day basis. Do you realize that today when I applied for a loan, this is what happened to me. When I finally got the loan, this was my interest rate. What's your interest rate, by the way? Oh, here it was when I'm trying to go get this house. I had to pull from everywhere I knew how to pull. Oh, you got your nest egg from your parents who passed it down, their parents and their parents. You know what I'm saying? It's like things like this you cannot articulate because this is just the way life is.
Yep.
True.
Yeah.
You're so true. Yeah.
That's good, Carmela.
Yeah.
I know. I think I watched. I'm watching social media now. I saw on social media. CLAUDIA. I saw on social media, Carmela, to your point, like someone had made a tweet just kind of talking about that. Like, my husband and I, we went in to get our house, and the people asked us, can't somebody in your family just gift you like the $400?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
No, that's
Nah.
not
Right.
a thing.
Yeah.
No, they can't. They actually cannot do that. No. And so that just kind of, reinforces that wealth gap. And there's just so much going on within our communities that, when you see a Black couple get married in the middle of a protest, man, sometimes it just makes everything a little bit better.
Yes. Warms your heart, man.
It does.
It just warms your heart.
That's Nikki Giovanni or somebody needs to be writing about this right now, talking about love in the air. That's all I'm talking about. But, let me ask you something. Okay, so we had that beautiful image last week of Black love and a Black man and a Black woman coming together in spite of all the odds. At the same time, on social media, we're seeing some images in which we are reminded that the relationships between the sexes, even among Black people, are under some strain or misunderstanding. So when we hear about the disrespect of a young woman who was thrown into a dumpster, we got to stop and wait and see. It's like, it's a wonder. It's a wonder. That's how we can even celebrate this one. What are we doing? How, in this moment, can you all talk to us about what does it mean to support a Black man in America right now and get to the point where we can, come together? What does it mean to support a Black woman in this context and create that spiritual bond in spite of everything else? How do we do that?
That's a good question. So I think we have to realize, first of all, that when you get married, especially, there are, I guess, ways in which you can perceive your union as it relates to other people. And one of the things that I think is a good, not what's the word I want to use? Not philosophy. A good philosophy to have in your relationship is that the two of you are a team. It's the two of us together. And obviously the Bible says the two are becoming one. So how do we view that oneness? Well, the first thing is the world is attacking us all the time. They're attacking us, whether they know it or not, sometimes just for our Blackness. And there should be one person in the world that I feel has my back, no matter what. And my wife should feel the exact same way. And I think this is a universal this is something we teach our couples, whether they're, Black or not, this is a marriage principle that when the two of you are one, it should be the two of you together, no matter what. And even if you don't agree about every aspect of everything, you're a unit, and nobody should be able to come in from the outside and get between that. But also, I should be able to come home from a long day in which I experienced, oppression or racism or whatever, and feel like I'm not going to feel the exact same thing when I get home from my wife. You know what I'm saying? There should be one safe haven, one place where I can go, one person that I know is going to have my back and my support and all that kind of stuff. And that's one thing I love about this woman right here. She's always been that way. In fact, when we were dating early on, there was something that I realized I'd never had before in any other relationship. And that is, I had a level of confidence about who I was as a person, because I felt like April believed in me. I don't know why. It did something to me. It actually made me feel like I could go to the moon. You know what I'm saying? I could do anything because she thought I could do anything.
I tell him he can go on American Ninja Warrior. I really believe that.
April,
that's probably true.
You are lying to this man.
I made him believe
So
that.
you're lying to this man.
I know he believes it. He does.
That's good. That's good.
That's great, April.
No, I think it's important. I think that we should really lift our men up, because so much around them pushes them down, and same for men should be lifting women up. I mean, I think it should be, I wish that in our Black culture, we would do that, and as a teacher, and I hate to say this, but, I hated to see Black women teachers talking to Black boys in a way that makes them feel less than. You know what I mean? I saw that. And of course, not everybody, but I saw it. And it always broke my heart because I felt like this is where they should get, even if they're acting up, even if they are, you can still discipline in love, and still let them know you are somebody, you are special, you are smart, because at home they may not be getting that. You know what I mean? So I think, with relationships, with husband and wives and couples, we should definitely be lifting each other up and every day, but I think it should go further than that. It should start with the way that we speak to our children, our young Black boys and our young Black girls, so that they can come up with this confidence that even though these things are going on around me outside of this home, outside of these doors, I know what I'm truly about.
So
you know what I'm saying?
We probably should comment on that too, because I think April and I had this similar experience with our upbringing. And that is, we both grew up in homes where our parents treated us with dignity.
Yeah.
Treated us like we mattered and we counted. They treated us like we were intelligent. They never spoke down to us. They spoke to us like we were whatever our age was. They spoke to us in an age appropriate manner. You know what I'm saying? And when we look back on that, we start realizing that there were a lot of things happening growing up.
Yeah.
We both of us have had to recount it lately. Like April said, she had the thing where she had to present to a bunch of her teachers. I had 2 different interviews that I did last week. It was right. One on Tuesday with Chad Stewart from Spencerville, and then another one on Thursday with Rick Johns from Olney. And it was a sort of a conversation to help them to understand the experience a little bit more, and ears were open. So I said, hey, I'll gladly do it. And just recounting some of those stories, like April said, I started realizing, man, we went through a lot of stuff. I mean, in high school, I was getting pulled over. Me and my brother were counting. We got pulled over like 16 times in a matter of like 3 years, and never once got a ticket. Gotten while Black. You know what I'm saying? That's just one thing. I mean, we're just talking about all the different stuff.
Right.
And then we're starting to wonder to ourselves, how did we turn out okay? Like, how did I not kill myself at age 16? Like, dead serious, man. What made me want to keep living? I think it was the environment in which our parents raised us to teach us that we were actually important. There was that thing. So I'm saying there's a lot of people that don't have that at all. And the one place you should find it is with your spouse. I mean, why should I have to deal with that more even after I got married? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's this whole thing of talking down to your man. Right. And I'm specifically saying man because I'm a woman. I'm talking about, that is really such a negative thing. I just feel like, talking down like they're a child, I feel like we should be talking against that as Black women.
Yeah.
Because that's what our Black men get on the job sometimes.
Yeah.
But everywhere in life. But at home, it should not be that way. And I guess because I'm a teacher, I feel like it shouldn't be that way at school either. Right. The kids. I mean, that's just because it starts when they're young.
No, I think what you guys are saying is so key and so crucial. And even as you guys were talking, I was also just thinking about the fact that basically what you're saying is it should positive speech should be between couples, but then also be between parents and children.
Yes,
and
exactly right.
And if you are not practicing that, you're almost setting your family, whether that's your spouse or your child, up to not be able to have the emotional strength and stability to properly process and deal with everything that comes out in the world. Because basically you guys are saying, hey, we are not an exception to what was happening to Black people in the world. Yeah. We were experiencing the exact same stuff. The only difference was our home life was one that was pouring into us instead of one that was beating us down as well.
So this is important because what you said, it's even a little bit further than positive speech, because it wasn't like our parents were just saying stuff to us that wasn't true or something like that. You know what I'm saying? They weren't saying, you're so
That's
handsome
key.
when you're actually ugly. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that. I don't think I'm ugly, but I'm just saying.
I know what you mean.
It wasn't positivity just to be positive and for positive.
Right.
It was the way in which they even rebuffed us or disciplined us. It was like, even though you're doing the wrong thing, I'm still not going to talk down to you when I say it. You know what I'm saying? I'm upset. I don't like what you did, but I'm not going to talk to you like you're nothing.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I'm not going to belittle you.
You don't get. Yeah, right. I'm not going to belittle you.
That's the word.
Right.
That's the word.
Exactly
yeah.
right. There was always this level of I'm speaking to you as if you're a child of God and you matter.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And the reason I'm doing this is because I love you. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like everything we ever encountered with our parents was always positive, because a lot of the stuff was like, why would you do that? But again, it was the way of sort of relating to us that made us realize what I'm getting outside from the world, that's the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm getting right here from my parents, this is how I'm supposed to be spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it makes you change. You walk around with your chest out. You have a posture that's like, okay,
you
do. You can hold your head up.
Because even though we have these stories, we can still be confident in who we are.
Right.
So that says, where we came from. And I think it's more than just home life. I think that is where it starts. Right. But I think it should be school. I think it should be church, which it isn't. Not always. You have these areas where it's here, but then it's not here. And this part can kind of bring you down. But if there's that one spot you can go to that will always bring that back, you know what I'm saying? You have to have that place. And I think for some kids, it is school.
Yeah.
But
here's what I'm really saying to answer your question, Carmela. When I met April and started dating her, what I'm saying is there was something I experienced with her that I'd never experienced before. So that my belief is, even if I grew up in a home where my parents talked down to me,
true.
Even if I never had a good teacher,
true.
Even if my church was a place that did not build me up, I feel like April just reversed all that with the way that she treated me. You know what I'm saying? So there was a level of confidence that I had that I never had before meeting her, because there was this, I'm with you. No matter what you do, it's me and you. And that gave me a level of confidence that I'd never had, even though I think I had confidence before that. So I'm saying in our relationships, we have the power to be able to
make or break.
And literally, you can take a broken man and make him into
that is
something.
So true.
Just by showing him it's me and you. And I think it's the same thing with women. We as men, we can treat our woman like a queen, not talk down to her, belittle her, treat her like an equal. She is not your assistant. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
These are things.
I feel that way, babe.
I know you do. I'm speaking now, but what I do to you.
Okay. I didn't say that, but I do.
He's like, let me free me right now.
Yeah.
Clearly, let me fix myself.
Say a little point in there. I hear you. Well, and I love what you are saying right now. I'm catching two things, I guess, probably something what Claudia was saying as well, is that this builds resilience, this communication and this pouring into our family at home builds resilience as we go out into the world. Yet, and on top of everything else, though, if you've already been beaten down and you've already felt the effects, or the pandemic of racism has begun to infect your spirit, this positivity and this pouring into in a godly way is something that is healing.
Yes.
And so, you
it is healing.
can prevent it, and you can inoculate yourself once you are in the middle of it.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I think it has to be deliberate.
It does.
And it has to be a daily thing. This is what I'm going to do, or this, and so much so that it is natural for you. You know what I mean? I think it has to happen in relationships. It has to.
Yeah. I agree. I'm the recipient. I know it works.
Yes. Listen, you better testify, John. Listen. Okay. I think this is really good stuff though, guys. And what it's making me think of is I'm wondering, are there some discrepancies potentially in how we maybe treat one another because we have different social and political views, right? So if I don't think that racism exists, then if you come home and start, if you're out of it, you're emotionally out of it, you're not feeling it, you're acting a certain way, I'm not going to respond to you maybe with the kind of empathy or compassion that you're looking for, because whatever systems you feel like are against you, I don't think actually exist. And so what do you guys think? How, all right, let me ask it right. It has to be a good question. How can couples properly navigate a relationship where they have differing views about social and political concerns?
That's difficult.
That is difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends though, because when you just said just now, one might have these feelings about, racism or whatever. And the other's like, I don't really see that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how that can work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I can't imagine my husband right now being like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're exaggerating about what happens. I don't know if that would be a happy home at this time,
right?
At this moment,
right?
I guess you could kind of not really talk about it if it's not happening around you like it is now. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But right now, I cannot see.
I actually feel like
that being I'm positive.
I'm not positive with your example right now. I'm not positive that would have ever been a good thing. I think that you might be able to ignore it. You definitely wouldn't be able to ignore it during this time.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But if you're a Black person that deals with this all the time and your spouse doesn't even see it, I feel like you might not feel seen. And I feel like that's a very important ingredient when it comes to relationship.
Yeah, or you'd have a part of you that you can't share.
Right, and that's a huge
part.
And
I think over time it would fester and maybe come out in a negative way. I don't know if that would be able to hang on.
Yeah,
so that.
So this is our philosophy when it comes to stuff like this. I would actually compare this probably to the equally yoked, unequally yoked argument, right?
For sure.
So. Okay, the Bible teaches do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Now, let me just say that clearly when the Bible says unbelievers, and then it says after that, for what business does light have with darkness, or, the different examples it gives. I think the Bible is being clear. It's not really talking about believers of differing denominations or anything. I think it's talking about people that have seriously divergent belief systems. Yeah. And if I'm a believer in God and you are not, the Bible is saying those two things aren't compatible. Amos 3:3 says, can two walk together unless they be agreed? So there's this idea that when two people are trying to walk together in the same direction, which I think marriage would be a good description of that you have to have some agreement on some basic things that you would consider fundamental. And I would say, which we tell couples all the time, you may have what we call your non-negotiables list. There may be things that are on your list of non-negotiables that for you, if your spouse or this person that you're dating does not agree with these things, you don't see a future. You know what I'm saying? And I would say for some people, this idea of whether or not racism exists might be on their list. You know what I'm saying?
Might be a non-negotiable.
It might be. Now I do think it's possible for people with differing political views to be able to get along and even be married, but it depends on the level of the politics that we're talking about. So I don't think there's a big deal if a person thinks that government should be small, and the other one thinks I actually like big government. I don't know, that doesn't seem like that much of a deal breaker.
Yeah, y'all gonna still be able to go to sleep at night on that.
Right. You can go sleep at night, all that kind of stuff. I'm not positive though that a person who is like all the way conservative and another person who's all the way liberal, like I'm not sure that they could coexist unless, and here's where if people don't necessarily have very strong political leanings, then it may not be that bad because, you could talk me into it. Hey, it's no big deal, whatever. But when we're strong and we're like on opposite sides, and if politics is like how I align my life, we don't align our lives that way. We have political views, but we don't lead with those. We're more Bible centric, I would say. And for us, what we believe about the Bible actually informs how we understand politics. There are some people for whom politics is how they understand the world. And so for those people, if they have differing views, I would say that might be similar to a believer and non-believer getting married. You know what I'm saying?
For that home.
For that home. So I'm saying you got to look at that stuff and you got to say to yourself, here are my list of non-negotiables. If one of them has something that they're divergent on, this might not work. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to keep coming up. It's going to keep being a problem.
Right. Race, though, I feel like.
First of all, race is not a political
That's what I'm
thing.
saying. I don't know if that is in
That's not even political. That's a social.
I think that I would be turned off if, I found out he was a racist. I mean, that would automatically just make me be like.
Yeah, I don't want to be with him.
I'm done. So yeah, I think it would definitely affect the way that you see the person, depending on what it is.
Right.
But I think those foundational things have to be there.
Yeah.
Those core things have to be there.
Yes.
Because we don't agree on everything when it comes to certain things in the church. I mean, I'm not going to put out there what it is, but but we're okay because it's not it's not a heaven or hell issue
or a non-negotiable
you know what I mean?
issue or anything like
or
that.
non-negotiable issue.
Right. And we have both, I think, made some concessions for the other, knowing that April feels strongly about a particular thing, church related. I have tried not to put those things on her.
That is true.
And she's made concessions for me in the same way, knowing that I feel strongly about certain things. And so, it just so happens I don't feel equally as strong as she does about that particular issue. If I did, I think it would be a much harder situation. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
No, absolutely.
Because that doesn't come up all the time.
Right.
I think it's not a big deal either. So I guess it just depends on the circumstances, the situation.
Yeah. I would love to hear an actual scenario of a couple and something that they're going through politically or socially or whatever, and try to rate from 1 to 10 whether or not I think this is a deal breaker. I think that would be fun.
So I saw online there was a young lady, she's in an interracial relationship. She is Latina and her boyfriend is Caucasian, and she's very much so kind of feeling, hey, Black Lives Matter, everything's going on. Brown lives matter too. Like brown people experience similar things. He's very much so like, no, this does not exist. I don't know what's going on. And so she,
are these people dating or are they married?
Dating. I saw in the comments,
tough.
I think that something like that, like April was saying, I feel like an example like that is just like, you don't see me. Right. And so you are not acknowledging my person and my active lived experience. This is not political philosophy.
Exactly.
This is my body.
So this is what I think we need to really grapple with these days. And that is, there are a lot of things that we give a political label to that actually do not fall under politics. And this is one of those things. And so when we start talking about it at church and then people respond with, I just don't feel like we should be having political conversations like this, I always rebuff them immediately and say, listen, this is not a political issue. This is not about politics. In fact, Jesus and the Bible talks about justice well before there were any of these modern political things in place. So this is God's issue. It's always has been. Just because a politician uses it to get votes and does it well and does it often doesn't mean they own this conversation. That's not a good thing for us to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to notice is that now that we've been having these conversations with people, that's where I started realizing that I hadn't felt seen. I don't think you realize, I didn't know. I mean, all I know is what I've always had. I've always been a Black man in America for 41 years. I mean, it's just been the same thing all the time. It wasn't until last week that I came to the realization for the first time in 41 years that what I was feeling that made me feel good was that I was feeling seen. I didn't even know I wasn't feeling seen before that.
Well, it's funny because mine was that my experience mattered. That's what, for me, I was like, wow, you're asking me? I've never been asked. I have never been asked to share my experience by white people ever.
Right.
I mean, we've been asked stuff about, separate conferences.
Yeah, they asked.
But we've never been asked, or I've never been asked. I've never been asked about my Black experience as a woman in America, as a Black woman in America. What have I been through? Right. And share that with me so that I can understand.
Right. And it felt genuine. It felt like they really wanted to know.
It did, because the response too let you know that it was, genuine.
So having
which
said
speaks to, April, if you're going to be in a relationship with someone who is not Black, they must approach you from that stance of share with me your experience. Let me be open to seeing, knowing, and understanding you.
Yes, and that is part and parcel to really being seen. And the reality is we go through this all the time on non-racial lines as a couple. when we were first married and we had our first child. There were people who would interact with April and say things or do things that would bother her, and I would dismiss it and say, "Babe, they didn't mean that like that. That was no big deal." And until one day I realized she feels like I'm not seeing her. She's going through something right now. She has all kinds of things that are related to having a child in your body, then not having the child in your body anymore, the hormonal changes, all those kinds of things. She did not want to be diminished in that moment. She wanted me to hear her and see what it was that she was actually saying. And it made her feel like she wasn't being seen or heard. Once I listened and opened myself up and began to now understand it from her perspective, then I could actually say, you know what? Even though I haven't experienced this myself, what she's saying she's experiencing, I don't like. And I started fighting for her on behalf of that thing. And she felt like it was my own issue. You know what I'm saying? Even when it wasn't mine.
That is such a great example. So this is the answer to your question. Here it is.
Yeah.
You cannot be in a relationship and not, okay, what am I trying to say? How am I trying to say this? And not be understanding of the other person's, whatever they're dealing with.
Their experience.
Okay, their experience.
Right.
Just as a man and woman.
Right.
As a wife.
Right.
So I feel like there's no way that as a Black woman, I could be with somebody who's not trying to hear or understand my experience as a Black woman.
Right.
Period. Because, and what I'm saying is, you might be able to get married and everything. You might get married, but over time, because we would not be where we are right now if he wasn't ever willing to listen and try to understand what I'm going through as a mom, as a wife, as a pastor's wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right.
If he wasn't able to, if he didn't want
Hold
to
on.
listen.
3 things I could never actually understand fully because I can't be a mom.
Right.
I can't be a wife. I can't
you
be a
will
pastor,
never
right?
be a mom. Yes.
Exactly.
I will never be a mom. You know what I'm saying? So there are things about parenting I understand. There are other things about being a mother I don't understand, but that doesn't mean I don't try to.
Right. And men and women are so different. He has to be able to just listen and say, you know what? I'm going to try to understand that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand it, but I'm going to support you.
Yes.
Whenever you say that you need this or that, I'm going to give it to you.
Yes.
Well, it's the same thing with the whole, even the political issues, the racial issues, all of those things. I feel like it's about your experience. And we have to be willing to listen and, like you say, be seen. And if you're not seen in your marriage, dude, it's going to crumble over time.
It ain't happening. I'm sorry.
I mean, it can last 20 years, but then it will be over.
That's right.
Because
there's only so much you can take.
Only so much you can take. Just like with us as Black people, there's only so much we can take.
Right.
And then we start tearing stuff up. You know?
Yes. No, absolutely. Go ahead, Carmela.
We, it reminds me of my husband and I, we'll be married 22 years this year. And
wow,
nice.
Congratulations.
We can come home and that conversation, that spark where you can just say, and another thing, do you know what they said? And so, and just, we go through times like this, just letting out, and you know what else happened? And then he's like, and then this is what went on next. And this is what this person said. This thing it goes on for the extent of your relationship because we are in this life until we die. And so there's no point where your experience, and I think what we're talking about, what you said, April, so aptly, is that this is personal. Mm-hmm. This is not an intangible principle out in life. These things are personal. I've got interracial relationships in our family, and we also have relationships in which there are people who are more conservative than others. And so you have this whole idea of, oh, you're going to that Black church. I don't want to go to that Black church. Or you're going to that Black school. I don't believe in HBCUs. I think we should be here. Or you're going to hang out. You always hang around with Black people and you're doing parties. I don't want to do this. This thing goes it cuts deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so all of these things, I agree with what she's saying. There's going to be a time when this thing is just going to be a recurring sword that we're picking at.
Yeah.
Right.
On the same page.
Yeah. And I think that this time period, COVID, has most certainly exasperated things like this and is it's exposing people. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
So that I feel like previously it's like you could be in relationship with somebody, not have these conversations, get married, everybody's good to go. And then maybe, sometime down the line, you're confronted with some of these issues. Whereas now COVID is just like everybody's exposed. Black folk is exposed, Caribbeans, white people, Spanish people, Asian people, everybody is exposed at this point. Right. Yeah. And so the time is literally forcing you to say, okay, you know what? I wasn't going to have these conversations before because I didn't want to put it on the table. It was going to be awkward. It was going to be difficult, what have you. Whereas now it's like, you know what? If I'm locked in a house with somebody for 4 months.
We better have this conversation.
And the world is protesting. We need to be on the same page about what's happening.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like I feel like people have to now approach dating and marriage and relationships from a much different standpoint, because these issues are no longer just like talking points. This isn't just let's come to the table and have an interesting conversation about Black Lives Matter or have an interesting conversation about police brutality. It's like, no. This is life or death. Where do you stand?
Where do you stand? Yeah, exactly.
On life or death.
which has been one of the positive things about this whole COVID thing, in my opinion. I think anything that helps to expose early on whether or not you feel like there's going to be an issue in your relationship is a good thing. Because I think rather than going through, 5, 7, 10 years with someone and then ending up realizing later you were never the same, it's nice to find out early on. And I feel like this whole pandemic is really making us like we're not liars anymore. You know what I'm saying? You can't lie. You know what I'm saying? Right. You are who you are, and this is who I really am. And the earlier we find that out, the better. When you're trying to possibly spend the rest of your life with someone. So that's one of the positive benefits I think that have come from this whole thing.
What are you going to do if you're already in it and now you realize this?
Yeah, better remember your vow. You know what I'm saying?
You know what though? I always say this, and I don't, this is just my feeling. There are always red flags. There's always I feel like there are little signs that are there that sometimes people ignore.
But I'm not asking about the red flags. I'm saying
you're talking about you already in the relationship. You're married now, and now based on what you're seeing from COVID that, man, I made the wrong decision. Now what do you do? I said you better remember your vow. That's what I said.
I guess that's all you can do.
And I think also couples need to be aware of the fact that just because this person has these issues and just because you have the issues you have doesn't mean that you guys have to be miserable. You actually can put some particular practices in place as a couple to make the most out of your relationship. You may never get to the point where you are, two peas in a pod where everything always works. But there's definitely ways in which you can get the most out of your relationship and enjoy being married to someone. They say love is a feeling, but love is also a decision. You can make a decision to love someone, and you can actually learn to love someone. Seriously.
You can.
There are people in arranged marriages who love each other. You know what I'm saying? And it ended up working.
But there's something that brought you to that person in the first place.
True.
So you can go back to that thing.
And build on that.
And kind of try to keep that as the center.
Right. But I'm saying this COVID thing might have exposed some issues. And if it has, that's good for you as a couple. Because now you know what to target, what to work on, what's the thing.
But you have to be willing to communicate and deal with it. You can't ignore it.
Right.
You can't avoid it.
Act like it's not a thing.
Right.
Because
that's the other side. You could just.
I'm saying COVID is made so you can't ignore stuff anymore. That's what I'm saying. There's nowhere to run. You can't hide. There's nowhere to go. You used to be able to hide at work for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day.
True.
You can't do that no more.
That's a good point.
Not at all.
You have to deal with
you can't even drive around the block no more. You just
that's what I'm saying.
You inside at this point. Okay.
Right.
Listen.
And you mentioned arranged marriages. I really think that's a thing that should come back right now. But I don't know. Maybe I should use the word should. But do you think that there's a possibility for that, given especially because we had Kim Bolden on maybe about a month or two ago, and we were talking about being single and COVID and trying to date and everything like this, and I've often said, and I have my daughter who's probably in the other room, probably listening right now, but it's a different time and a different space, and I'm wondering if this is something that could work again.
Arranged marriages?
Yeah, man. What do you think?
No way.
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna just say no to that.
And I'll tell you why, especially in America.
It's not what we do it in a way electronically.
Carmela has a whole proposal.
That's what
Who's doing the arranging?
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right, that's the question. Who's arranging?
Who's in charge of the arranging? That's what I want
Well,
to know.
I don't know. I'm wondering. Get back to a point where. Okay, y'all laughing at me.
I'm just thinking about growing up and my parents say, "Oh, he's a nice guy."
Thank
And I'm
you.
like,
Exactly.
no.
In the world.
No. Yes. No, I do not trust my family to do any of that. And I hope they watch it. No, thank you. They have tried to connect me to many a soul. And at 29 now, they're very much so like, wow, Claudia, you had some vision on that one. Yeah, that was a no. That was a no. Yes, that was a no.
See why.
Get out of here. But man, guys, we were so glad to have you guys here. Man, final words. What is the hope for you guys in this headline? If you could wrap everything up, we said in 30 or 60 seconds, especially to John, 30 to 60 seconds.
You know me.
I do. It's good stuff. 30 to 60 seconds. How would you cap everything?
I would say first that there is hope for a better tomorrow when you see this couple that got married in the midst of all of the social unrest and upheaval. That's a good symbol of us being able to take even negative stuff and make it positive. If you can keep that attitude in your marriage, in your relationship, whatever, I think you always have the ability to overcome whatever it is you guys are dealing with, because you know that negative stuff's going to come. It's going to happen. It's part of relationship, and it's how we react to it, how we deal with it, that makes the difference. I think that couple is actually a good symbol for us in our relationships on being able to make the best of even negative situations in our relationships.
Yeah. Wow. And just keep that love going in your home. Make sure that, like we talked earlier, lift each other up every day. Find a way every day to lift up and make sure that here, this is the way it is. When you go out, you have all that stuff, but here we're going to lift each other up. We're going to love each other.
This is a safe haven.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially you get built up, not torn down.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Guys, where can people follow you, hear more? I hope you guys all know. Listen, the Just John and April podcast, it is life and life more abundantly. Okay. Every Friday, I'm dying
Thank you for
of
saying
laughter. That. Okay. Listen, you need to receive this in your spirit. There are days where I am absolutely with John. And then there are other days I'm like, yo, I am so with April, this girl. Listen, what is she dealing with? Okay. So if you just need some good wisdom, a good laugh, some great, insight on what's going on in the world, you definitely want to be following the Just John and April podcast. So
it's just
guys,
on YouTube. Just look it up on YouTube, type it in your search.
Yeah.
I think we have Instagram and Facebook that might be the same handle. I'm not good with any of that stuff, so I think it's all Just John and April. Just look that up and you'll find us wherever. Now, I don't remember, Claudia, where did you fall on the talking during movies thing?
She was not with me. Right? She was not with me on that one.
Do not speak during a film. Just
thank you very much.
April,
just don't speak.
Thank you.
And I'm with you, April.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I was sitting there like, no, April, no. Last time we were good. No, come back. Come back. You guys gotta watch that episode.
Other debates like that we'll have on the show. You can join us.
Join us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Carmela, are you doing anything? Are you on any panels, podcasts, speaking engagements? What you got going on, Shawty?
We have the conversation with the folks out in California on Saturday, Sabbath afternoon this coming week. We're talking about everything from police brutality, the protests, and the racial conversation over again. And that's Saturday with Ainsworth Morris and out in California. And then we have a couple of virtual, this is a new life where we get together and we do a virtual convocations. And so we're on with the folks out in California again on the 26th, 27th, 28th, as well as with the Allegheny East what used to be camp meeting, but now will be a virtual convocation as well in a couple of weeks. So, yeah. What about you, Claudia? I know you're trying to get some rest.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about me. The list is too long. If you want, you can find me on a podcast with Central States this Saturday, June 20th at 4:30 p.m. talking about racism, and then next Saturday, Lake Region Conference camp meeting, same topic. This is what I've been on for the last 3-4 weeks. So, but guys, it's my life.
You're doing good, though. You're doing great. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It's like even in the middle of the week, this is my life. Man. But guys, listen, we cannot do this without Message Magazine. And so we are sponsored, hosted, and supported by Message Magazine. And so we just want to encourage you to make sure that you are following us on all of our social media. Make sure you are following us at Message 1898. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you're getting our weekly newsletter as well as our bi-monthly magazine. You can subscribe to both of those things at www.messagemagazine.com. But it's so much more than that, guys. We really want you to just support the ministry of Message Magazine. We have Bible studies, we have tracts, we have so many other products, and we are just committed to equipping Black people to come into a greater knowledge and understanding of God. We are committed to trying to address the concerns and issues of Black people. And so we just really need you to support us in that work, in that effort. Partner with us because we know that if you partner with us, we can continue to spread the gospel throughout the world, but even particularly within prisons. If you did not know, Message Magazine does circulate in prisons, and we need your help in order to be able to maintain that ministry. So donate, subscribe to the magazine so that we can continue to spread the light of this message. All right. Thank you so much for joining us once again to another episode of What's the Message? Of course, join us next week. It's going to be the same day, same time, just a brand new, different topic. So we'll see you then. Bye.
Claudia, I think the one other thing that we have to remember, our behavior is definitely influenced or impacted by
Claudia, I think the one other thing that we have to remember
We're just
is
excited that
we
with
have
the
plenty of
powers
people
of Zoom and the
that
like,
want to be
we-
Claudia, I think
the eating of certain animals
is that we have plenty of people that want to be ministry. Claudia, I think one other thing that we have to remember is that we have plenty of people
ABC affiliates
that
here
want
in the
to be
United States.
ministry.
Not
Claudia,
telling the
I think
truth and
one
going
other
back
thing
to
that we
let's
have
just
remember
dip.
some of
is
the
that
issues.
we have
And
plenty
so
of people
we live our lives
that
working.
want to
If
be
you think about
brother from another
Claudia,
mother,
I think the
the
one other thing that we have to
pastor,
remember
Richard Bird,
is
and
that
I'm
we
telling
have
you,
plenty of
you know,
people
we handle
that
the heavy
want to be
stuff. We
ministry
do
partners
the
with
heavy
Message
stuff.